An election audit and ballot recount for the presidential race will soon be underway in Georgia. What state officials are saying about that process.
And Georgia may be in the red zone again in terms of increased COVID-19 cases, but Columbus trending in a different direction. We'll break down the numbers in a live report.
And it was another warm day across the Chattahoochee Valley on this Thursday, but your Friday and weekend, well, we'll talk about it in your forecast coming up.
Coverage you can count on. This is WTVN News Leader 9. Sponsored by Montlick & Associates, Columbus Injury Attorneys.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us for News Leader 9 at 6. I'm Barbara Goche.
And I'm Jason Dennis. It's been more than a week since the presidential elections and still no clear winner in the state of Georgia.
With uncertainties within the votes, the state moving now on to a recount.
Understand, when you are really emotionally tied to the outcome, anything you see that feeds your belief is believed by you. That is the rationale. That is the reason we've chosen to do this audit in this time, in this way.
Georgia's voting system implementation manager Dave Sterling holding a news conference today as Georgia faces a November 20th deadline to certify its election results. He answers questions about the statewide election audit set to start in all 159 Georgia counties tomorrow morning. The Secretary of State's office says this will be the largest hand retallying by an audit in the history of the United States. And the only goal is to give every voter and candidate confidence in Georgia's outcome. As of today, President-elect Joe Biden is still ahead of President Trump by some 14,000 votes.
And taking a look at the national electoral votes now. Let's look at the map right now. And Joe Biden, of course, with the lead there. He has been declared the victor in the presidential race by most news outlets with 290 electoral votes, according to the Associated Press. And incumbent President Donald Trump with 217 electoral votes so far. You still have North Carolina and Georgia that have not been called yet.
Meantime, the Biden-Harris team continues to move forward with their transition, even if the Trump administration blocks access to key transition resources and mounting legal challenges. Biden's transition team taking a calm approach to Biden assuming the presidency. With
70 days until his inauguration, Biden pressing ahead with top staffing announcements for his West Wing, likely coming later this week. Ron Klain announced already as the incoming Biden White House chief of staff. You remember Klain led the Obama administration's Ebola response, and notable amid the increasing COVID-19 pandemic.
As we mentioned, Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger ordering a hand recount of every ballot cast in the general election. That is roughly 5 million votes. News Leader 9's Cindy Centofanti explains what the process will look like moving forward. She spoke with a couple of local poll managers who will give us some insight into their roles during such an historical election. They've got quite the job ahead of them, right, Cindy?
That's right, Barbara. They sure do. And Muskogee County actually finished certifying the ballots on Friday, but now the next step, like you said, is an audit. And that was actually supposed to be held today, but that was pushed back until sometime possibly tomorrow or Monday so that elections workers and staff can receive more training.
Because the margins are so close for the presidential race in Georgia, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is ordering every county to do a manual recount hand by hand of total ballots cast.
So we have a verifiable paper ballot. And so on it, it'll say who your selection is for president. Was it, President Trump? Was it Vice President Biden? And so it's very obvious who the vote was. And so you just really go through those, the ballot paper and just, look and count.
Muskogee County was prepared to start the traditional risk-limiting audit process, which normally entails pulling a random sample of ballots and reviewing a small batch. But under Raffensperger's new orders, Election Supervisor Nancy Bourne pushed the audit back to allow more time for training. The hand recount must be completed by Friday, November 20th.
We're just going to piggyback on the process. We don't want to let y'all rush us. We're going to take our time, make sure it's right. So once the final verdict is there, that we did our 100%, gave 100%, and we gave y'all the right answer.
Poll workers like Alan McCoy say they are not worried about the state's process and are standing by, ready to do whatever is needed to ensure thorough and ethical recounts.
It was a civil duty. It was giving back because so many people back in the day that was our ancestors that couldn't vote.
It's not a hurry up process. It takes time because we don't want to make mistakes.
Raffensperger says a large reason behind doing a recount hand by hand of all ballots is largely due to allegations of voter fraud in Georgia. Davis says she wasn't witness to any instances of fraud.
We're not trying to suppress their vote or block their vote. We're here to help.
The risk-limiting audit process is scheduled to start this Monday, but according to election supervisor Nancy Bourne, it could start anytime sooner, even early as tomorrow. Reporting in Columbus, Cindy Centofanti for WTVM News Leader 9.
Certainly, lots of folks will be watching. Cindy Centofanti, thank you for the live report.
All eyes are also on Georgia's 2 U.S. Senate runoffs as the outcome can determine who controls the U.S. Senate. In one race, Senator Kelly Loeffler is facing Democratic challenger Raphael Warnock.
In the other race, incumbent Senator David Perdue is up against Democrat Jon Ossoff. If Democrats win both seats, they would take control of the Senate starting on January 20th, as Vice President-elect Kamala Harris would have the power to break ties in the chamber.
And News Leader 9 will continue monitoring the Senate races and keep you updated on important dates for the runoffs. You can go to WTVM.com for the very latest.
Going to turn now to our weather. Certainly less rainy on this Thursday and staying warm once again today. Here's a live look from our Alpha Insurance Skycam, looking out at a very nice uptown Columbus tonight.
So how are we looking for tonight and Friday for high school football, or maybe any other plans you may have? Let's go to Chief Meteorologist Derek Kincaid.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, really nice day today. We finally got rid of some of that unsettled weather that we've seen all week long. 74 degrees right now in Columbus, already 66 over in Auburn. So the air out here is drying out. And because of that, things are cooling down a little bit faster over in some of our East Alabama counties. The sky's mostly clear tonight. I don't think we're going to have much in the way of clouds or rain to talk about really anytime soon. High school football, we've got a few games tonight, in-town games, Shaw at Spencer, Kendrick at Columbus. These temperatures will be in the 70s for the kickoff, back down into the 60s by the time those games are wrapping up. Now we're going to talk a bit more about your Friday and look ahead to the weekend and the cool down next week coming up in that forecast, guys.
All right, Derek, thank you. The United States continues to break records for new coronavirus cases and hospitalizations. Yesterday was also the 9th straight day of new cases topping 100,000. Today, the U.S. has reported more than 10.45 million cases and 242,000 deaths. According to Johns Hopkins University data, 44 states are reporting a rise over the past week.
And according to the New York Times, when it comes to new cases of COVID-19, Muskogee County is pacing about 5.5% fewer cases than the rest of the Peach State. News Leader 9 Samantha Servin joins us now to break down where the Fountain City stands right now and how that could impact your day-to-day life, including those masks. Samantha?
Jason, right now, Columbus Mayor Skip Henderson says we're not quite at the point of putting the mask mandate back into play. And according to the data, while Columbus did see a small uptick in coronavirus cases earlier this week, information from the mayor's office suggests our number of new cases dropped by half from Tuesday to Wednesday. Governor Brian Kemp's order says local governments can enact mask mandates if their rate of the coronavirus cases is more than 100 new cases per 100,000 residents over a 2-week period. Columbus has been well below that mark for a few weeks now, but in the recent days we've been hovering right around that 100 mark. Mayor Henderson says they're keeping a close eye on the numbers, and if they don't decrease, that mandate will come back into play. Councilor John House says he has an idea where the small uptick in cases came from.
I think Halloween probably is what caused the problem. Every holiday is going to do that. I think Thanksgiving is going to be an issue, and any other time that people get together.
Data from the mayor's office shows the weekly rolling average of new cases per day jumped from 12 to 18, but is on its way back down again. Mayor Henderson's chief of staff says they are watching that threshold very carefully, and if it stays above 100, the mask mandate will go back into effect here in Muskogee County.
All right, thanks very much for that breakdown, Samantha.
A local high school cancels its final game of the season due to COVID-19 concerns. This story is all new at 6. Northside High School's athletic director sent out a letter today notifying parents the last game of the season was scheduled for next Friday against Starrs Mill.
Morgan Ingram says the game could not be rescheduled due to the Georgia High School Association's end date. The team's senior night will, though, be scheduled for a later time.
And the state's top education leader says he's concerned about the sporadic spikes of COVID-19 cases in schools.
Our political reporter Lydia Nussbaum tells us how some schools have had to shut down because of it.
Yeah, well, the last several weeks here in Alabama, we've seen several schools decide that they're going to move to virtual learning only because of the pandemic. Some of the most recent schools to do that include Tuscumbia City Schools as well as Alexander City Schools in Alabama. Now, I talked with State Superintendent Dr. Eric Mackey, and he tells me that the biggest problem schools are facing in Alabama is when faculty members contract the virus, not necessarily when students get the virus. Mackey says schools do not have enough staff to make up for when, let's say, cafeteria workers and teachers get sick. And with the shortage of substitute teachers in Alabama, it makes it even more difficult for school systems to stay open.
We've not had any schools that I know of that had to close because of an outbreak among students, but eventually there are not enough adults to keep the school going, and there are no substitutes this year. In fact, we have districts paying close to $150 a day for substitutes and can't find subs.
Now it's up to local school districts in Alabama to make that decision on whether or not they're going to stay open or move to virtual learning only. Now, Dr. Eric Mackey said that the state is not going to mandate that all schools in Alabama shut down between the weeks of Thanksgiving and Christmas this year. In Montgomery, Lydia Nussbaum, WTVM News Leader 9.
All right, Lydia, thank you. And the COVID-19 school dashboard will be updated tomorrow online.
Coming up here on the news at 6, a fight in the Muskogee County Jail sending several deputies to the hospital. An update on their conditions ahead.
Plus, the 2 suspects accused of shooting and killing a Georgia teen, Ahmaud Arbery, appearing before a judge today requesting bond. Details from the court appearance. That's coming up next.